Hello, everyone. I'm Lacey Maloney. We're going to get started in just a second here. I want to make sure you can all hear me and see everything okay. It looks like there's a little bit of glare I'm getting. So 1 second. I'm going to go shut the shade over here, okay? 1 second. I will be right back. Okay, that's better. We're having an unusually sunny day here. I think Seattle finally realizes it's summer. Technically, it is summer, so we're getting some sunshine, which is great. All right, you can use the chat box to type in your questions. Let me know if you can't hear me. You're also going to need to refresh your, whoops, hold on 1 second. You're going to want to refresh your computer screen, or excuse me, your internet browser screen if the video goes funny or something like that. Just hit the refresh button and it should bring you right back into the live seminar. Okay, so let's get started here. I'm Lacey Maloney, the Health Sanity Coach, and we are going to be talking all about lazy keto A to Z in today's masterclass. So this class, I've set aside a couple hours. I don't know how long it's going to take. Some of my seminars I've done up to an hour and a half before, but I just want to make sure that we have enough time for question and answers. And of course, if you don't have time to stay on for the entire webinar, that's fine. I will send out a replay that's going to be available for just a short period of time though. Only to you guys who have subscribed to this webinar. And so you can go back and watch the ending if you weren't able to stay for the whole webinar. Okay, then let's get started. So what is keto, right? What is this crazy diet that you might have heard about? And maybe that's what sparked your curiosity to come here today. Or maybe it was from some of my posts. Maybe you've been a little curious. What am I talking about? Eating all of this fat. This sounds really unhealthy, right? But once you really understand it, like how I came to understand it, it all makes sense. Makes perfect sense. And that's why I love it and why I want to share it with you guys today. When I started keto, it was about 5 months ago, maybe a little bit longer now. And, you know, it took some time for me to get into it. But now that I have been doing it, it's just natural. It's just a way of eating. So I don't like calling it the ketogenic diet. I like calling it the way of eating, ketogenic way of eating. You could say diet, yes. Word diet, right? The connotations that it has that come along with that word have really negative effects for me. I used to diet back, over 10 years ago. Some of you know my story, but over 10 years ago, I went on a crazy low-fat diet, reducing my calories, thinking that this was going to help me get healthy and lose weight. And instead, I just became miserable. And if you've ever tried the low-fat, counting calorie type diet, you've been there. You're just left thinking about food. You're hungry all the time. You become obsessed and more unhealthy. And more thinking that there's something wrong with me. Why can't I do this? I just don't have willpower. It's that, you're the problem when it's just the diet that's the problem. And that's when I found health coaching and the Institute of Integrative Nutrition. I got my certificate in health coaching there. And that was when I understood what health is really all about. It's not about low fat. It's not about counting calories. And once you bring in the healthy foods that you need and the other healthy lifestyle practices, you can become healthy. So that's what I've been doing for the past 10 plus years. Is I guess you would say it's just a traditional healthy way of eating where you're eating carbohydrates, you're eating fruits and vegetables, you're eating whole grains and things like that, depending on the person's tolerance, of course. And I've been doing just fine with my health coaching practice, showing people how to get healthy and still be what we call a sugar burner. But today I'm going to show you how to be healthy and be a fat burner. That's what we want, right? Because really at the end, for most of us, what we're trying to do is burn our body fat stores anyways. And we don't really want excess body fat hanging around, right? That all that visceral fat that's really unhealthy for your organs, that internal fat, we don't want that. We want that gone. And that's really going to bring us into better health. Let me just check the chat box really quick here. Okay, I was wondering how on keto. Do I need to write all this down? Okay, so, okay. So Dot, you're gonna want to take some notes. I am going to provide you though with a cheat sheet. This you can hang up on your refrigerator at the end. You know, at the end of the session, I'm going to provide you with this document. This you can hang up on your refrigerator. It's like a little quick cheat sheet for you. And then I've also got some of the key concepts, as well as the next page has some recipes and some resources to go to. So good question. But yeah, you are probably going to want to take some notes. But for me, if you're like me and I start taking notes, then I get more into the note taking than I am really about listening. So kind of, you know, it depends on the person. And you probably are going to need to hear this more than one time for it to finally sort of stick and make sense. Okay, so let's start talking about keto. What the heck is keto anyways? So we're just going to abbreviate it keto for right now. Ketones. This is an alternative fuel source. So most of us right now are using carbohydrates for fuel, which is glucose, right? That's what pretty much everybody is using. We're using our glucose for fuel. But we can use ketones. That's an alternative fuel source. And you can get ketones when you're eating a high fat, adequate protein, and low carb. So we have to increase our fats in order to get ketones, because we've got to decrease our carbohydrates to get ketones. And I'm going to explain more about this in a minute. But generally looking at this, if you told someone that you were doing this like I did, oh, I'm eating a whole bunch of fat, I'm not eating carbohydrates and, you know, adequate amount of protein, people go, that is insane, right? What are you doing? You can't eat fruit, you know, and I get it. It sounds terrible at first. So let's look at why would you want to do this in the first place? Why am I doing it? And why am I bringing this to my clients? I love ketones and ketosis and the ketogenic diet because it accomplishes so many things that I'm trying to do anyways, working one-on-one with clients, but it does it relatively fast. And I'm not someone who's a quick fix person, right? I don't believe in quick fixes. I don't like to say that doing ketosis or doing the ketogenic diet is a quick fix, but it can really get you to that next level in a really short period of time. And of course, you can't forget about the other things when it comes to health, you know, sleep, stress, all of our self-care things, relationships, right? All of that stuff also has to come into play. It's not just about food, but we're going to be focusing on food today. Okay, so with ketones, when you're burning ketones, we're going to balance blood sugar. We're going to reduce cravings or eliminate them relatively fast, right? So sugar cravings, carbohydrate cravings, these all go away. It also increases energy. Increases focus. These are really the biggest two that I've noticed for myself, and why I'm like, wow, this is really cool. And, you know, I've done a grain-free diet before. I've done gluten-free. I've done elimination diets where I'm not eating animal products. And, you know, I've done all of that. And I have never had this much focus and energy all day long before. And I can attribute it to the ketogenic diet for sure. It's also helpful for reducing high blood pressure. Carbohydrates hang on to water molecules. So when you have stored carbohydrates in your body, you have also stored water with that. And the more carbs that you're eating, the more stored glycogen you're going to have, the more stored glucose. Stored glucose, the name for that is glycogen. So you're going to have more water associated with that, more water retention, and that can lead to high blood pressure. So this is one reason why ketosis can help reduce blood pressure. You're also going to, this is also helpful for people who have candida. So candida is a yeast overgrowth in the gut. And what that can do is make you crave sugar a lot because those yeast want that sugar, and so they're always asking for it. It makes you crave it. It can cause skin problems. It can cause low energy, migraines, a whole host of other things. So we can eliminate that because we're not eating carbohydrates or as much carbohydrates, and the ones that we are eating are going to be the nutrient dense ones. We're not eating the sugar carbs. Let's see, what else does it do? It improves mitochondrial function. Mitochondria are the energy powerhouses of all of your cells. All of your cells have them and need to be functioning optimally, and for you to feel really good, and for you to not have disease, for your body to repair itself properly. So this is crucial. And of course, there's other ones here that I'm not going to have time to touch on, but the other major one that most people are interested in is the weight loss. And why that happens is because your body, because you're eating fat and fueling your body with fat, your body can then use your own body fat stores as fuel. It can also convert those to ketones easily and burn that as fuel. So it's fascinating because you become less hungry because your body starts using its own fuel, fat reserves as fuel. And we're going to go into detail about how this works. So, and also, you can also use this for weight gain. You just have to adjust and increase your fat intake even more. But of course, most people are interested for the weight loss component. Okay, so we've covered a lot of the goodies that the ketogenic diet can bring you in a relatively short period of time. And how short am I talking about? That could be anywhere between a week that you start seeing results. It could be 2 weeks. It could be a month. It could be 6 weeks. It depends on how insulin sensitive you are or how insulin resistant you are. It could also depend on if you have other health issues that could be coming up in the way. If you have high stress, that could also get in the way. But relatively speaking, most people will notice dramatic results in 30 days. And I don't think I've ever said that phrase before, dramatic results in 30 days. That sounds so cheesy, but it's true. So how does this all happen? Let's take a step back here, okay? And talk about why do we eat anyways, right? We're eating because we need energy, okay? Where do we get energy from? We have 3 macronutrients that we get it from. Our macronutrients are carbohydrates, protein, and fat. Basically, this is it. We've got 3 options for energy, right? With carbs, they break down into what? Carbohydrates break down into glucose. Protein is going to break down into amino acids. And our fats are going to be broken down into lipids or fatty acids. I'm just going to write lipids. It's shorter than fatty acids. Okay, so these are all going to be broken down. So you eat the food, right? You eat it in its whole form. Your digestive system then has to process it, break it down into forms that your body can use it in, right? The problem with glucose, okay, is that it's highly toxic in your blood. You actually can only have up to 1 teaspoon of glucose, this is sugar, floating around in your blood at any one time. Any more than that is a toxic state. It can cause a lot of damage to your nerves, to your brain function. We don't want that, right? That's a bad thing. This is why we're always trying to have a balanced blood sugar. Okay, you hear that phrase a lot. I just said it a minute ago. That was one of the first things that ketosis does, is help balance blood sugar. And that's what I'm trying to aim for normally when I'm working with clients, and doing that in a little bit different way, not doing it with ketones. But here, when we do it with ketones, right, we're using fats. Fats and amino acids are 2 essential nutrients, along with vitamins, minerals, and water. Carbs, on the other hand, are not an essential nutrient. Your body does not need carbohydrates. Protein, which really isn't used directly as energy for the most part, when you consume protein, it's going to go, the amino acids are going to go to help with cellular repair. It's going to go help, repair muscle tissue, any damage that's going on. But any extra does not get stored in your body. So eating a diet that's high in protein is not going to help you. And what happens with the excess is it will get converted into glucose. So this is why before I said we wanted to have adequate amounts of protein if you're doing the ketogenic diet. You don't want to have high protein. And this is the mistake that a lot of people were making when the Atkins diet became really popular and really famous, was people were still afraid to eat fat. They were really afraid to have, too much fat. What was it going to do to their cardiovascular system? Isn't that unhealthy? They did the low carb thing, but they were doing too many proteins. So it would work for some people, depending, and it would work for a short period of time. But over the long run, it wasn't healthy. People weren't seeing results, and they couldn't stick with it either, because they're just making glucose from proteins, and that's not what we want. Okay, let me check the chat box really quick and see if you have any questions. Okay. All right, great. So fats. So fats are one of our essential nutrients. And that's why if you ever went on a low-fat diet, you went nutty, right? Your body is is deprived of fat. Imagine if you did not eat any protein, right? Your body is deprived of it. You need that protein for cellular repair. Fats you need to help with your brain function, with nerve endings, helps encapsulate every cell of your body. So these are essential, like I said before, and carbohydrates are not essential. Interesting, isn't it? Okay, so let's talk about this glucose. Okay. So what is really the issue with glucose and being a sugar burner? Okay. Whoops. So, as I said before, Glucose is blood sugar. It's broken down from carbohydrates. And if you're relying on this for your energy, you're essentially a sugar burner. The overall problem with that for a lot of people is it can be caused by a lot of different things. It could be caused by a long history of not eating properly. It could be caused by a long history of stress that has also influenced your hormones, including insulin, which we're going to talk about. Probably not eating properly for your body is one of the biggest reasons why becoming a sugar burner, it can cause a lot of problems, or not becoming, staying a sugar burner can cause a lot of problems. So let's look at what happens when you're eating sugar. Okay, let's say we have a piece of bread. Let's say it's the morning, right? And you have toast in the morning. You eat this piece of bread. It's whole grain maybe, all right? It's still a flour. So it still gets absorbed into your bloodstream a little bit faster than we would like, let's say. So your blood sugar, your glucose, you eat the bread right here, okay? Your glucose kind of spikes up, right? Because you're digesting this relatively fast. Now what happens right here is insulin. This is a hormone. Insulin gets secreted. And it says, okay, whoa, we need this glucose to go into our cells. We can't have it in our bloodstream, right? Glucose in your blood is toxic. We've got to either use it right away for energy or store it in our muscle cells and in our liver as glycogen, okay? If all of those reserves are taken up, your body will convert it to triglycerides. And that is sort of like a longer term type storage for energy, unless you get too much of a buildup. And then you get the bad cholesterols, you get more fat deposits, and the triglycerides, once they get deposited as fat, are much harder to burn. So we ate our bread here, right? Our blood sugar, we're digesting it now. Our blood sugar starts to rise. Insulin, our pancreas says, hey, we need to secrete insulin. We've got to get rid of our blood sugar. So now it's starting to come back down. Yay, okay, now it's going into our cells, except because in this scenario, my very scientific graph here, because it's bread, it's carbohydrates, it's a little too much. It's a little high. This peak, let's say right here, is about like what we want. Let's just say this is the level, but we went over that level. Our pancreas had to produce more insulin than what is ideal in order to get our blood sugar to come back down, right? And then what can happen over here is your blood sugar can dip. It can go too low. So what happens at this point? When your blood sugar is too low, this is where you get hangry. This is that I am hungry, I need to eat something right now, or I'm gonna get really mad, right? Like you're getting moody, you're getting agitated because you've got to eat something like quick. And so if you're having breakfast and then you have a snack like at 11, then you have lunch, and then you have that 3 p.m. snack, and then you have dinner, and maybe there's a snack after that, your blood sugar is all over the place. You are one of these classic people that your blood sugar is not balanced, okay? Also, if you're getting hangry at any point, your blood sugar has dipped too low. Now, because insulin did such a great job at shuttling away all of that excess glucose, because you consumed so much, it like went into an overdrive, now it's too low, and now you have to eat again because you need energy again. It's like, wait a minute, we just stored it all. Wait, but you still need energy. So you eat, usually this is when the refined carbohydrates again are most appealing. So you might again reach for a piece of fruit, maybe. That would be like the good one, a piece of fruit. Usually it's like crackers, and maybe you'll have some cheese with it. Some other carbohydrate type snack that looks really appealing. To bring up your blood sugar back up again. what you want, right? What we are aiming for is homeostasis. That is, your body's always trying to be in homeostasis. It's always trying to bring yourself back down or bring it back up, using hormones, using enzymes. You know, every little piece of every little ounce of your body is always trying to maintain this level of homeostasis. And when you're eating properly and you're not eating excess glucose, you're going to have homeostasis. So let's say instead of bread in the morning, you had bacon and eggs. That's what I had this morning. There is no glucose. There's a couple grams of carbohydrates. There's like 1 gram in an egg and 1 gram in bacon. Okay. So your blood sugar is not, you're not going to have this spike at all. There's no glucose there, right? It's protein and it's fat. That's the essentials of bacon and eggs. There's a little bit of carbs, okay, but not enough to cause this spike. Instead, what you get is a slower rate of digestion because they're more complex. Oh, I also had spinach with it too, and mushrooms and cheese. It was an omelet with bacon. We'll get into more also of what I eat at the end. So because it took longer to digest and absorb, and because there weren't a whole bunch of carbohydrates in it, and also because I'm already now fat adapted. So what we have happen is it's just a low, slow increase. Okay, so this is like normal. Well, okay, actually I'm fat adapted. So this doesn't apply to me because my glucose is even lower. It's like down here. But for most people, okay, let's say their glucose is going to rise up just a little bit more and hang out here for a while, okay, and then come down, but it's not going to dip below. You're not going to have a crash. You're not going to become tired and have this dip in energy. Like 3 p.m., a lot of people get that dip in energy and they're tired and they need some sugar, some food, something else to wake them back up again and get them going through the last half of the day. We're trying to completely avoid that. So what you want is like a nice little swoop, and then it's going to come back up, but it's going to stay in this, in this sort of homeostasis level, right? It's going to stay here. It's not going outside of the lines because we're not eating all of this sugar and junk food, right? So this is what we want. I hope you guys can kind of see that. Okay, let me see. We've got a question here. Okay. Christy says, when I hear the word ketones, I think of DKA. Can you explain the difference? Okay. Oh, okay. DKA, I think you're talking about diabetic ketoacidosis. I believe that's what you're saying. Let me know if that's what you're talking about, and we are going to get to that. Okay. Is this a safe plan for newly diagnosed type 2 diabetic trying to get blood sugar in line by cutting down significantly on carbohydrates and basically anything else I enjoy? Yes. Okay. Excellent question. When I was back in like November, I had a client who was diabetic, and she was my first diabetic client, and it wasn't until working with her and seeing how sensitive she was to even having an apple with peanut butter and doing like a protein, fiber, and fat combination. She couldn't even handle that. Like the carbs in the apple were too much for her and would spike her blood sugar up. And it wasn't until then that I was like, wow, okay, well, what else can we do for someone who's so sensitive to carbohydrates? She's so insulin resistant. This is where ketosis can be incredible and can really help because we're cutting out glucose altogether. We're cutting out insulin out of the picture. So let me get a little bit more into that. Okay, Christy says yes. Okay, we are going to talk about that. And you don't have to worry unless you're a type 1 diabetic. That's really the only case where diabetic ketoacidosis could be a real big issue for you. So we've covered the sugar, the glucose, and why this is a problem. So, okay, let me also point out. So when we've got high blood sugar, we're creating inflammation in our body. We're causing damage to our cells. And this is the root of so many of our health problems. When we have insulin that has to keep being pushed out by our pancreas, that's where your pancreas can become, it can fail. And that can lead to type 2 diabetes. It can also lead to type 1 diabetes if you become autoimmune, if you've got other health issues. That means your pancreas is no longer going to be secreting that insulin. It's just been burnt out. And also, when we always have insulin at high levels, this causes your fat cells to hang on to fat even more. Instead of releasing fat, what we need to release fat is for insulin to go back down. We need our insulin levels to be low and in a balanced state, and then our fat cells can release fat. If you have high insulin, it's not going to happen. Your cells are going to retain fat. Okay, so let's see here. Did I miss anything? Okay, I think we're so far so good. So fat, right? It sounds like it's really bad because we've been told it's bad. It sounds like, right, dietary fat is going to make us fat, right? And just looking at it at the surface, it makes a lot of sense, right? It's like, oh yeah, of course you wouldn't want to eat that. But the studies that show fat is bad for us sort of all originated from this one guy. His name was Ancel Keys. And he he published a study called the 7 Countries Study. Okay, the 7 Countries Study. But hold on one second, getting a dry throat here. Okay, so this is back in the 1940s, I believe. He came out with a study and said, look at these 7 countries. What they all have in common is they eat too much fat and they have high risk of cardiovascular disease. Look at all the heart attack rates, and he pointed them out. However, what he actually did was he studied 22 countries. So we had 22 countries total that he studied, and he cherry-picked out these 7 countries. And he said, okay, these are the ones I'm going to use for my study, because countries like Norway and France, cultures that were eating high-fat diets but did not have high rates of cardiovascular disease, he left them out. He just said, let's, ignore these. And then, there are some other countries in here too. But he cherry-picked the data. And at the same time, right around when he was doing his studies, he was publishing them a few years later, he became an advisor to President Eisenhower's doctor. So Ancel Keys was advising President Eisenhower's doctor, and Eisenhower had a heart attack, or stroke, I believe it was. And it was the next day that the doctor came out in public and said, okay, everybody, we need to look at Ancel Keys' information, because he's telling us we have to stop eating high fat. All of this fat and cholesterol is causing our heart attacks, our cardiovascular diseases, and strokes. New regulations came out, said we need to decrease our fat. Since then, we've been doing that, and we haven't gotten healthier, right? We have not gotten any healthier at all. Instead, we've just gotten worse. But this has perpetuated in our society for so long now that the fear of fat is only now finally recently being squelched, because when you're someone like me who's been eating so much fat now for 5 months, and my blood tests come back and they're beautiful, I haven't gained weight, what do you say to that? You know, that completely dispels this notion that fat and cholesterol is bad for us. Just in 2015, it was the very end of 2015, the Dietary Guidelines Committee also came out and said that cholesterol is not a nutrient to be concerned about of overconsumption, meaning that people who, you know, it used to be said that we had to, you know, cut out the yolks from your eggs, you know, reduce cholesterol. Dietary cholesterol is going to increase your cholesterol in a negative way, and we don't want that, so cut out cholesterol from your food. They finally came out and said that's not the case. So we're making a little headway here. Okay, so did I kind of help you here with fats? Let's talk about cholesterol. Okay, this is fats and where this sort of myth came from. But cholesterol is also another issue and another thing that people are really concerned about, right? And I understand why. So basically what we're told is we've got two different types of cholesterol, right? Our HDL and our LDL. HDL is always said as the good one, and LDL is the bad one. You want it low, you want the other one high. They're really just two different types. One is neither good nor bad. And having too low of cholesterol is actually a higher risk of death than having too high of cholesterol, which is very interesting. Let's see. Statin drugs that are used to help reduce cholesterol also reduce your hormones. So what is this whole long-term cascade effect that we're having on our bodies by having, you know, by trying to have low cholesterol, by taking these statin drugs and medications? They're impacting us in other ways. So if you do have high cholesterol, it could be because family history. That is one case. It could be that you don't have enough fiber in your diet, and we're going to talk about fiber. It's very important when you're doing keto. And it could be that you are overweight and obese. Extra weight that you have on you can also make you have extra cholesterol. So with the ketogenic diet, when you're reducing your weight, when you're increasing your fiber intake or making sure that you're getting enough fiber, cholesterol levels for a lot of people will normalize and balance each other out. So in my case, I had really low cholesterol. It was like in the 140s at one point. Now I'm up to 180. I just had my blood test done. I posted a video on my Facebook page if you want to watch it. I won't go over it here, but now I'm finally at 180. My HDL is at 110. It's perfect. With a lot of people who are doing ketosis, their cholesterol levels normalize. Whoops. Okay. Don't want my whiteboard to tip over on me in the middle of this. All right. So let's see here. What am I going to talk about next? Well, let's talk about ketosis. Okay. So what are we doing? So like I said before, with ketosis, we need high fat. High fat in our diet is going to allow us to become a fat burner. We need low carbohydrates. That's because in the presence of insulin, you're not going to produce ketones. So your insulin levels need to be low. It doesn't mean you can't have any insulin. Your body will make some normally, but we need it to be low. So when you're eating carbs, you're going to have spikes in your insulin or increases in your insulin. That's why we need to have low carbs so we can have low insulin. And we need adequate protein. Okay, let's figure out what do these numbers look like. when we're talking about adequate protein, as I said before, your body can't store protein. So unless it's in muscle, right? That's it. We only get protein stored in muscle. So unless you're a body burner, a body builder, you're lifting weights every day, you know, getting excess protein is not going to be beneficial to you. So what you need to do is calculate about, so we're calculating a baseline for about how much lean protein, you know, basically your ideal body weight in kilograms. And that's going to tell you how many grams of protein you should have every day. So what is essentially the weight that you would like to be at? That's what you need to ask yourself. What is the weight? And for some people, it might be more. Maybe you're looking to gain weight. So you do need to increase your protein intake. Most people, it's going to be a little bit lower number. Let's just say the number that I used in the example that I gave you guys was 125 pounds. So if you're 125 pounds, you're going to multiply your weight. You could Google this too. It's a lot easier. But you multiply your weight by 0.4535. Multiply your weight in pounds by 0.535, and that will give you your weight in kilograms, which is 56.68 kilograms. And this is about how much protein you want to start consuming in a day when we're trying to go into ketosis, okay? You could even do less. Everybody is going to be a little bit different. For me, when I first started, I had to do 40 grams. I could not have this much protein in a day. I had to go down even lower. That is what worked for me. And now that I'm in ketosis, I don't think about it too much. Your carbohydrates, when you're starting out, you want to start out with about 20 grams of carbs. Some people can sustain ketosis going up to 50 grams of carbohydrates per day. It's all going to depend on how insulin resistant you are. It could also depend on, you know, other health factors, but start with 20, you know, aim for 20, which is not a lot, right? You're basically going to be eating a whole bunch of fat. So once you get a good understanding of carbs and your proteins, the rest of your sources of fuel and energy for the day and food is going to come from fat. And I don't measure this. This is why I call this the lazy keto. You can measure, and there are people who are used to doing used to the diet world, the low fat world, where they were counting calories and measuring out everything, weighing their food. I can't do that. I'm like allergic to it from my dieting days. It just makes me miserable thinking about it. So what I do is, when I got started initially, I got a good understanding of how many grams of carbohydrates were in foods like celery, right? Foods that I was going to be eating. How much protein was in an egg, and how many eggs was I going to be eating? And then where's my fat going to come from? And we're going to go over the foods that you can eat in just a minute too. So get a good understanding. Start looking at your nutrition labels and get a good understanding of what is in there. Should you have celery or should you have kale, right? Which one is going to be lower? And just develop this baseline. Then the rest of your calories are going to come from fat. And initially, you can do this for a couple weeks and maybe you have to tweak it. Maybe at some point you realize, you know what, I don't think I'm getting enough fat. I might have too much protein, and the protein, which was my case, was converting into glucose because I was getting too much. Once I decreased my protein intake and increased my fat just a little bit, there, bam, I could start feeling that I was getting into ketosis, and we're going to get into those signs in a minute too. So this is what you're going to aim for. Okay, 20 grams of carbs. Figure out what your ideal weight is in kilograms, and you can start from there. Some people will go down 10%, which probably was what I should have done initially, because if I did that, I would have been right around the 40 40 grams of protein mark, and start with that as your base. And you're going to have to tweak it from there. Everybody is going to be different, okay? The more fat that you consume initially, though, the faster you're going to get into a state of ketosis. So some people are, both feet in, like head first. I don't know if you can go both feet in head first at the same time, but they're all in, right? They're like, I want to do this right away. So they'll do stuff like bulletproof coffee you might have heard of, or butter coffee as I call it, where you're actually drinking coffee that has butter and coconut milk, coconut oil in it. People go on bacon fasts where they only eat bacon. Bacon is high in fat and it's also delicious, so I can see why. Or they'll even do a water fast where they're just drinking clear liquids. So it might be broth and also water, because that forces yourself into a state of ketosis after about 3 days. Your body is going to has to use up all of its stored glycogen, and the only thing left is going to be ketones. So that's sort of a quick way for people to get into ketosis. That's too extreme for me. Like, I would rather take things a little slower for myself and figure it out on my own, listen to my body and figure it out that way, rather than starving myself for 3 days. I think I would be really miserable if I did that. So that's just to give you an idea. Okay. So let me see. Okay. No questions. That's good. Okay. So, so what foods are we eating then, on a ketogenic diet? It's not just all meat, right? Because as I said before, you can't have excess protein. You're not going to go into ketosis. But that's a big main one, right? Meat, seafood, let's see, we've got nuts, seeds, eggs, let's see, our butters, butter and high-fat dairy. So heavy whipping cream is okay. And I'm not talking about the sweetened one with sugar in it. I'm talking about like the one that you would whip up yourself and make. Some people will put that in their coffee. It does have 1 gram of carbohydrate. And I love the idea of getting to put milk in my coffee again. I drink it black and no sugar. And I was like, oh yeah, I get to have like creamy coffee in the morning again. Get into ketosis whenever I would use it for some reason. And that's the case with some people. So you have to test. If it's not working for you, look at where are you getting too many carbohydrates. And really in the morning, it seems for me, no carbohydrates is best. Or, coming in a different form. In the milk form, it didn't work for me. Coconut. Of course, the oil, but also the milk is high fat. Whoops. Coconut milk. Even the coconut flakes, they're really high in fiber. Just be careful about how much you're eating. And then we've also got, let's see, our veggies. Okay, this is a big, huge component of it. The veggies are going to be your low carb veggies that are high in fiber. That would be your lettuces, so your dark leafy greens. Dark leafy greens, your cruciferous veggies. This is basically cruciferous veggies. They call them that because they grow in a cross, sort of, if you look at it cross-sectionally. But that's your broccoli, your kale, cabbage, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts. Let's see, I'm forgetting a bunch. Collard greens, your dark leafy greens. We've got arugula, spinach, a lot more. I'm drawing a blank on right now. But these are essential in this. And before, when I would be working with clients, when they were a sugar burner, when I was doing it the sugar burner way, this was a huge component of it because they cut out your sweet tooth. It adds all of this nutrients, all of your micronutrients come in. And that's a lot of times where cravings can come from, is when we're not giving our body micronutrients, the vitamins that it needs. We can get cravings from that because your body is still essentially starving. It might have enough glucose, it might have enough energy, or maybe even enough ketones, but if we're not getting enough of the micronutrients, those vitamins and minerals, your body's still hungry and it's still going to be asking for more. So these are essential. And of course, the fiber component, which is essential for helping clear out your liver of any excess stored cholesterol, the bad cholesterol, which isn't really bad, it just needs to get moved out of your body, right? Let's see, what other veggies? There's other vegetables that we can eat, but initially you want to start focusing on these two. And then our berries. So in the fruit category, we have berries. It could also include cranberries. Of course, make sure that they're not sweetened. Blueberries, strawberries, and raspberries, they're okay. So this is, let's see, I don't think I'm forgetting anything, but let me just double check. Here we go. Oh, avocados, of course. I'll put that up here. Of course, I'm forgetting something. I'm going to have to squeeze them in here. Olives, yummy. These are really good, high fat. We can also do lemon and lime, celery, cucumber, mushrooms. Those are all okay. And I've got all of them written down on your cheat sheet. This is sort of what you want to stick with initially, is a diet like this. And it looks quite similar to a diet that I would have told people before to stick with. And all of these foods are super nutrient dense. Butter, grass-fed butter, when you get it from cows that were able to eat grass, contains vitamin A and vitamin D, two nutrients that we're not getting enough of. Our meats are one of the highest sources of nutrition. Oh, organ meats are also really good. I know people go, ew, gross. It could take some getting used to. Personally, I love pate. Now that I've gotten used to it, I love it. They're chock full of nutrition and nutrients and vitamins that you're not normally going to get, that you'd have to get from a vitamin anyways. And better to get your nutrients from food than from supplementation when you can. So when you look at all these foods, they're really high in healthy, good stuff for us. And what I did was basically I picked out, when I first started, I picked out the fats that I liked, which of course was bacon and butter. So when I was trying to get into ketosis and doing it with the bulletproof coffee method, where you're having lots of, or well, not lots, but you have a tablespoon of butter, you have a tablespoon of coconut oil. I have that recipe for you guys. It was almost too fast for me, and I wanted a little bit slower approach. So I would literally have bacon and butter in the morning. This is when my husband thought I was crazy, and he was just like, you're crazy. You know what? I'll try the low carb thing. But he was doing it like the Atkins way. And I was like, well, didn't you try Atkins like back when it was popular and like you hated it and it didn't work for you? So like, why are you trying to do it again? So it took him a while to come around. And it wasn't until I got my blood test results back actually that he was like totally on board with it. But I understand. I mean, like I understand where this whole fear is coming from. So if you're afraid to go for high fat stuff, I wouldn't recommend that you do this. You have to be on board with it. Otherwise, it's just not going to work. Another favorite that I love to eat, or used to eat in the morning, would be an avocado and a little bacon on the side. You could also have cheese. And then I would have like a snack in the afternoon. Sometimes it might be a little bit more substantial, like maybe it was a salad with some cheese and some nuts and things like that on top. Olive oil. Olive oil is another, olives and their oil, right? That's another good healthy fat for us, as long as it's a good quality one. But that's how I started out. So I had to tweak it. I had to play around with it. And I noticed that when I had the nice big chunk of fat in the morning, but not too much. The butter coffee was too much. It was just a little bit of protein, I guess, was really probably the trick for me. And that was something that I could maintain and enjoy and get me to become fat adapted. So that took, I had a lot of tweaking done, right? Because I was using myself as a guinea pig. So I would say I have been fat adapted for 2 months now. So about 3 months, I was like tweaking, and then I went on vacation and totally went off keto, like right in the middle of it. And that oh, that was terrible. But now I went back onto keto. It took me about another week until I finally got into the swing of things, until I got back into keto. And I've been sort of, tweaking it and doing it ever since. Now what I do, and what you would know when you're in the ketogenic state, you'll know because you're going to have that sustained energy. You're not going to have cravings. You're going to eat less food. You're going to lose weight because your body starts using your own fat stores as fuel. So these are the signs that you want to look out for. Am I, do I have more energy and focus throughout the day? Am I eating less, right? Look for those signs. And I wrote down the signs for you to know what to look for to go into keto if you're in the ketogenic state. Now, you can also test. I have not done any testing other than my glucose testing, but you can do a blood test for ketosis or for ketones. The problem with the blood tests is that the strips for them, each strip is about $2 to $4. They're super expensive to test. And so I just haven't, I feel like I know I'm in the state of ketosis because of how I'm eating and how much less I'm eating now. So I don't feel that's necessary, but I know for some people it's an affirmative, especially in the beginning when they're trying out. You could also do the urine test strips. Those will test for the ketones that are in your urine, but they only work initially. But they're relatively cheap. You can go to the drugstore. You can go pick them up at, Walgreens or Rite Aid. They have them in where they sell the other diabetic items. So you can test for urine ketones and see, well, the urine ketones are actually called, oh gosh, I wrote it down. There's 3 different names for them. I'll get to them in a second. But it tests for the ketones in your urine. Only going to happen in your initial stages because your kidneys are, what you're trying to do, right, is convert your body from being a sugar burner, from being a glucose burner, to being a fat burner, right, to burning ketones. And that takes time, and that takes a little finessing, right? Your body's like, wait, I'm so used to carbs. What's going on? What's with this fat? Okay, I guess I've got this fat. This takes time to make this transition. And while this is happening, your kidneys are going to be excreting ketones because it's like, wait, well, I don't use ketones for energy. So it's going to be excreting them in your urine initially. And then once your body gets used to it, you're not going to be excreting ketones in your urine anymore, or you shouldn't be. Your body will be using them for energy. Then the third type of ketone test that you can find is a breathalyzer. And it tests for the acetone that comes off in your breath. That's also a ketone byproduct. That test is about $200. The only good thing about it is that you just have to buy the one thing one time, $200. But I haven't done any of those. Like I said, I was curious. I wanted to try it, but then, I just never got around to ordering any of them and figured, well, now I'm already in ketosis, I can tell. And the fourth way that you could also test is sort of a roundabout way. And that's testing your glucose, your blood sugar. And that's what I did because I already had a blood glucose monitor. Everybody needs to be concerned with their blood sugar. That blood sugar and digestion are really the root causes of all of our other health issues. When we can clean up these two things, we can clean up so much more about what is going on with us. So it's not just diabetics who need to worry about blood sugar. And so I got the blood glucose monitor just as a way to test myself to see, well, how good did I eat for the day? Or what effect does this alcohol drink have on me? Right. And so when I was doing that with ketosis, I would test in the evening before bedtime. I would test again in the morning. Your evening blood glucose level is going to tell you basically about how well you did for the day. Your morning blood glucose level is going to tell you, it's like, this is what we have set up for the day. You want them both to be low. Dr. Mercola recommends that before you eat your meal, your glucose levels should be below 80. And that sounds actually sounds pretty normal. My fasting blood glucoses would be as low as 64, which is really low, right? But in a normal state, if I was a sugar burner and my glucose was at 64, I would be famished. I would be starving, looking for some food, something to fuel myself. But because I'm using ketones as fuel, I don't need it. I'm perfectly fine. I can have low blood sugar and not have those side effects that go along with it because I'm not using glucose for energy. I'm using ketones for energy. So that's one way to confirm also if you have that low blood sugar and you're totally fine. And then you can also test 40 minutes after a meal and 2 hours after a meal. So that's going to give you a good understanding of at the 40-minute mark, that's sort of what effect, how much glucose entered your bloodstream from that meal. And then at the 2-hour mark, that's how effective your insulin was at decreasing your glucose. So, wow, that was a mouthful. I'm going to do a video about the glucose monitoring in a separate one, and I'll show you how to do that. That's a lot cheaper way to go, although it's more of a roundabout way because we're testing sugar. We're not testing ketones, right? But it's going to help. And now, maybe you're not interested in doing ketosis. Maybe this is like a little bit much for you right now, like a little too crazy. But getting a blood glucose monitor and just having a better understanding of your day and how your food is affecting your body can really help open your eyes to seeing, what choices that you're making that are having a negative effect and what ones you're making that are having a good effect, a beneficial effect. So that's just one little tidbit about glucose monitors. Okay, so let's talk about potential side effects with. So initially, for some people, they go into what is called, or what they call the keto flu. Sounds terrible. Okay, let's say, whoops. Side effects could be the keto flu. This is essentially from that low blood sugar happening, and your body's still trying to get used to this idea of ketones and what it's supposed to be doing with them. So it could be anything from nausea to headaches to vomiting. I didn't have that. When I did keto, because I was doing it gradually, and because I already had a really good balanced blood sugar. My blood sugar wasn't off the charts, right? It was already in happy levels. So I did not have extreme issues with going into keto at all. What I would find is I would occasionally get queasy, especially after the morning meal of fat, except when I added the bacon in it, it was a lot better. And I really didn't feel like that anymore. But what mitigates that, what stops that from happening is if you make sure you drink water and make sure you get electrolytes. Those two are key. Initially, when you're doing keto, it's going to take time for your kidneys, as I said, to get used to this. And so you start excreting all of this extra water. You're also not hanging onto water anymore because you're not fueling your body with carbohydrates. Remember at the beginning I said that carbohydrates, for every 1 gram of carbohydrates that you have stored in your body, you have 4 grams of water along with that. So if you're storing all of this carbs in your body, that can lead to high blood pressure. It can lead to edema. And once you stop giving yourself carbohydrates to use and to store, right, your body is going to be using them up, and it's going to be getting rid of them. And along with it, the water that goes along with it. So dehydration occurs. Loss of electrolytes along with the dehydration. Let's see, what other side effects? Digestive side effects you could have. So it's a lot of fat, right? If you're going to be switching your food to eating a lot of fat, sometimes your gallbladder is just not prepared to handle it. And this could cause, you know, everything from diarrhea to constipation to just a gurgling stomach. And again, the severity of your side effects is really all going to depend on your level of health right now. Let's see, those are the main side effects. The other big one, and the one that people are so worried about, is diabetic ketoacidosis. And that's not an issue here. And I'm going to tell you why. So what is diabetic ketoacidosis? Essentially, this can only happen when a person has type 1 diabetes. Whoops. And what's happening here with a type 1 diabetic is, let's say they eat bread, okay? And their glucose is rising. This is glucose. But let's say, for our argument's sake here, that they were also doing a ketogenic type diet where their body had been relying on ketones, okay? So we've got both of these players here coming into play. Both of these are swimming around the bloodstream now. This is what causes the highly acidic blood that people are worried about with diabetic ketoacidosis. Both of these are acidic in the blood. And your body has mechanisms of controlling the acidity. That's what your kidneys do. So in this form, I know, like with alkaline, acid alkaline type diets and concerns, anytime you hear that something is acidic, it sounds like it's bad. In this case, we don't have a choice, okay? They're both acidic. And when they are both increasing, because a type 1 diabetic needs to supply themselves, inject themselves with insulin in order to get their glucose to go back down. So let's say they didn't have their insulin with them, they had eaten bread, and they had also had all these ketones going around in their body. That's going to create this highly acidic state. Normally in everybody else's blood, if we can't have both of these going on at the same time, because in the presence of insulin, either this mechanism is going to shut off and or your glucose is going to be decreased, which both pretty much happen. So once in the presence of insulin, you're not going to be able to produce ketones. So we don't have to worry about this. Your insulin is going to scoop up your glucose and shuttle it away. So your blood doesn't remain acidic. So I hope that answered your question, Christy, about diabetic ketoacidosis. And I did also create in your cheat sheet, I have a little paragraph about that because I know it's a big concern for a lot of people. Let me look at some of the questions here. Can you have too little protein, Colleen? Too little protein. You could have too little protein, absolutely. And that would mean that you're not repairing normally. So you're going to have to test your body for that. And by test, I mean trial and error. Go through and see how much can you really rely on fat for fuel, and how much protein can you rely on? What's the lowest amount of protein that you can rely on? Like I said, for me, it was about 40 grams, which sounds really low. But that was what worked for me initially. Let's see, is being in ketosis for lengthy periods dangerous, Dot? Great question. From what I've seen, no. But it's all going to depend on the person and what the goal is, what the overall goal is. What I've done now that I've been pretty much in ketosis and fat adapted, my body is now used to relying on ketones. I'm used to this now. Now that I've gotten into this state, I can do what they call a carb upload, and I can have a day where I have carbohydrates. And the next day, I don't have the negative side effects that I did when I initially was doing ketosis, went on vacation for a week and went off of it. And that was miserable. I had headaches and migraines, and not migraines, I had headaches and fatigue and brain fog, low energy. I was tired. Even though I came back for a whole week, it took me a whole week to get rid of those symptoms and to finally start getting back into ketosis. That was a little more dramatic though, because I was off of it for an entire week, eating pancakes and ice cream and bad stuff. So now that I've become fat adapted, and I can also sense the signs of when a food is like not making me feel good anymore, I can now say, okay, I've had enough pizza. I've had enough carbs. But I can do that once or twice a month. I can have a carb day where I'm, maybe out with friends or out with family. Like I was at a barbecue last weekend and I had, it was like strawberry shortcake. And so I make these exceptions, but I don't go overboard with them. And I've only been able to do those exceptions now that I've been into a state of ketosis for about 3 months. So yeah, let's see. Great information. Oh, hi Juan. Good to see you. Or you see me. Hi. Any specific glucose monitor instrument to purchase? There are a couple good brands out there, and let's see, the Precision Max. I have to look it up and remember to include that in my glucose video because I can't remember the name of it right now. Yeah, because some of the glucose monitors are a little bit different. Some are more accurate, especially for testing low amounts of blood glucose. Let's see here. So Jeanette was wondering how long it takes to get into ketosis. And as I'd sort of touched on before, it's really going to depend on the person. And it's also going to depend on how much fat that you're eating initially. If you're eating a high amount of fat and no carbs, you're going to get into ketosis really, really quick. If you find that it's hard to do that though, you're still your body is still relying on glucose so much for energy, it's going to be hard because you're going to still crave those glucose foods, those bad foods. Well, they don't need quotes. They are bad foods, right? The sugars, the breads, the pastas, you're probably still going to crave those, and it will take a little bit longer and a little bit harder. One thing I did to get over any type of craving like that, like I love corn chips. That's my weakness. But anytime I would have a craving like that, I would go for macadamia nuts or an avocado or a piece of cheese. Have more fats. And I'm going to show you some of my snack foods that I used to have. And now that I don't snack, all I eat all I eat in the day, I have my breakfast in the morning, which happens sometimes happens as early as 8, sometimes as late as like 9:30, 10, just depends. And then I have dinner. Dinner happens at about 5 o'clock, and that's it. So, and my dinner is substantial, and my breakfast is also substantial. But the purpose of that is to do what's called intermittent fasting. And basically, you give yourself a shorter period of window to eat your food, and that allows the rest of the time, the next 13 to 15 hours of no food. You can still have non-caloric beverages, so water and tea is fine. But the rest of that time, that allows your body to burn its fuel sources, to burn its fat sources, right? And to burn your ketones and get your body into that fat adapted state even better. So one thing that people can do is eat too much food while on ketosis, snacking too much. They're worried about being hungry later on in the day or something, or they're just not used to. That was one of the biggest things I had to get used to in the beginning, was not snacking, because I would just assume I would be hungry because like, oh, it's lunchtime. I'm normally hungry now. What am I going to eat? Like I'm probably going to be hungry in about an hour and I might not be around food. So let me just eat something now. And then I won't be hungry. But what I was doing was really overeating. I was eating too much food in the beginning. And so I did actually gain some weight, but I knew that I was on the right track and I could just tweak this a little bit, like just give it a little bit more time, and I was going to start going in the right direction again. So I'm not gaining weight anymore. I can have 2 substantial meals and be happy for the rest of the day. And I'm not thinking about food. I'm not starving either. This is one of the great things about the ketogenic way of eating, is that you're satisfied. Fat is such a satiating nutrient, and it leaves you feeling full. So that's one of the biggest benefits also. I'm not thinking about food. So it saves me time. It also saves me money. I don't buy as much food anymore because the calories that I am eating are so nutrient dense and so high in calories, right? Like a tablespoon of butter is like, I don't remember, I think it's like 100 calories. But compare that to like 100 calories of crackers, right? Volume wise, you can see how the butter, with all of that calories packed into that little tablespoon, is gonna, go longer. It's gonna last longer, right, than the big box of crackers. So it's actually saved me a lot of money. One thing you can put that money towards is buying better quality fats. So making sure that you're having grass-fed meats, pastured. When you cook your bacon, you want it to be at 350 degrees. And you can bake that for about 30 to 40 minutes, depending on the thickness of your bacon. But that's so the fats don't go rancid and become a carcinogen. So 350 is the highest that you want to cook your bacon at. You want to buy organic dairy and organic cheeses, organic butters when you can, and make sure, because right, we're fueling our body now with fats. You want to make sure that they're really high quality. And our not high quality fats are the vegetable oils, the canola oils. Those are not high quality fats. They're rancid. They've been stripped of anything good for them. They're highly unstable when they're exposed to light and oxygen. So that's why companies, they have to add in deodorizers to take out that rancid smell. Otherwise, it would smell disgusting and you would not touch it. And they add colorants to them to make them look better. Those types of oils you do not want, and they're not part of a keto diet. Let's see here. Any other questions? Any fats to avoid? Oh, I think I just answered that, Leah. Great question. Yes. So in addition with those highly processed vegetable fats, the canola, the corn, the soybean that we don't want, trans fats, of course, is another one. Artificial fats, that's trans fats. No, those are inflammatory, just like the vegetable fats. They're really inflammatory and yeah, very unhealthy for us. Let's see here. Yes, ew to rancid smells, Colleen. Oh, yeah, totally. I recommend everyone to smell your chapsticks, smell your lipstick. You will know what rancid smells like. If you don't know, like when you smell it, you have to like turn your head away. It smells awful. And people don't really do that as much. All right, ladies. So smell your lipstick, and it's like one of those that's been in there for 5 years. It probably is going to reek, and you don't even realize it until you actually smell it. So just a little tip right there, because they put oils in our makeups and stuff too. Okay, so let's see here. Boy, we have covered a lot of stuff. Okay, fiber. This is one thing I want to talk about. I had mentioned it before about getting your fiber from veggies. So, and I also said the 2 most important things that we need for proper health, they start at your digestion and your blood sugar. So this is where fiber comes in with digestion, okay? Whoops. Fiber. All right, you can read that, right? Okay, so with the ketogenic diet, we're eating high fat. We need to especially make sure we are getting our fiber in. Fiber can come from carbohydrates. Here's the catch-22. But that's why we want them to come from our dark leafy green and cruciferous veggies, those types of carbohydrates. This is going to provide us with a lot of fiber. You can also supplement with fiber, but you have to make sure it's organic. If you're doing psyllium husks, it must be organic. O-R-G-A-N-I-C, organic. The psyllium, most of psyllium is grown in India, and they don't have very strict laws about pesticide use and insecticides and stuff. And so the crops are heavily, heavily sprayed. So if it's non-organic and you're ingesting it, you're also ingesting a whole bunch of other toxins. Those toxins mimic estrogens, and we don't want that, right? We don't want those xenoestrogens. So choose organic psyllium husks. And I'll show you the brands that I take in just a minute. But this is important. Now, when people are counting how many carbohydrates are in something, a lot of times you'll hear people refer to net carbs. So a net carb is essentially the leftovers after we've subtracted out how much fiber. So let's take celery for an example. Celery, and I cannot remember the numbers. I should have looked them up before. But let's say a stick of celery has 6 grams of carbohydrates. This is what you're going to see, like when you Google it, or if it had a nutrient label on the back, which celery doesn't. You're buying it in the produce department. Let's say a stick has 6 grams of carbs. This is what you see. And then below it, it's going to say fiber. And let's say 3 of those grams come from fiber. Now, what we don't know here about the fiber is really what type of fiber that it is. Is it a soluble fiber? Is it sort of like a starchy fiber where it is going to have some effect on our blood sugar? Or is it an insoluble fiber where it's really just a lot of bulk and roughage, which is good for helping move stuff out of our colons, right? We don't really know a whole lot. All we know is there's 3 grams of fiber. And so people will subtract. Okay, so they'll say there's 3 grams of fiber. It's going to mitigate 3 grams. Well, so there's 6 grams of carbohydrates total, right? But 3 of them are coming from fiber. So people say, okay, this only has 3 grams of carbs total. This is net carbs. They subtract out the fiber. And they say, oh, okay, great. It's only got 3 carbs, 3 grams of carbs. But you do need to be careful because, as I said, we don't exactly know the type of fiber. Obviously, celery has got a lot of roughage and stringy stuff in it, but we don't know how much of that really gets absorbed and could potentially be turned into glucose. Some of that could if it's a more starchy type fiber. So the only precaution here is when you're initially starting, I don't recommend relying on net carbohydrates. This can kind of get you into trouble and get you eating too many carbs and not realize it. And I've outlined the other foods that you want to be careful of. But when it comes to our dark leafy greens and our cruciferous veggies, these are so nutrient dense and so low in carbohydrates that you can eat plenty of them. You don't have to really skimp as long as you're making up for it with a lot of fat on top, right? Put some olives, some cheese, some avocado, nuts, olive oil, and get your fats and your carbohydrates that way, and your fiber, right? We're looking for fiber here. Okay, now the fun stuff, sugar and alcohol. Okay, so initially when I was doing this, I could not get into ketosis while having alcohol. My husband, on the other hand, has been having no problem with that whatsoever. He's just biologically different and it's been fine for him. But in my case, I had to stop alcohol, and what it can do is just mess around with your liver. If your liver it's got too much stuff to do and now it has to process alcohol, you might not get your ketone production from your liver. And that seemed to be the case that was happening with me. So you just have to test. You have to try. And alcohol does have carbs. Some alcohol has carbs. Beer, of course, is going to have more. Wine is going to have some. And then your hard alcohols actually don't have any carbs. And that's really interesting. Because where are the calories coming from? This is what I don't get. Okay, so alcohol. Let me talk about hard alcohol for just a second because I just think this is really fascinating. Whoops. Alcohol. Okay, so we always hear that this gets converted into sugar, and yeah, your alcohol is going to get converted into sugar, so be careful about how much you drink. But hard alcohol, let's say this is vodka. Let's say you've got a shot, right? There's no fat in here, right? There's no fat. There's no protein. And there's also no carbohydrates. None. It's just alcohol, right? Our body, though, how do we process alcohol? This is where the issue really comes into play, is the processing of alcohol. It affects our liver, but it doesn't give us calories in the way that we think of calories as energy and as food. But it taxes your liver, and it takes up basically room in your liver where your liver would normally be secreting ketones or cleaning up stuff, holding on to glycogen. Could be doing a whole host of other things, detoxing. Now we've got to detox alcohol. And so this is why it can kind of slow metabolism and cause an effect on your calories. But overall, it's kind of like a 0-calorie food. And the way that they figure out calories, by the way, is by burning the food in water and seeing how much the temperature rises. It's called a bomb calorimeter. Sounds crazy, right? C-L-I-O. Uh-oh. Calior. Okay. My brain stopped functioning there. I don't know if that's spelled right, but it's a bomb calorimeter. And I just thought that was really fascinating because we always hear about alcohol converting into sugar. That's not really what it's doing. But it can still have an effect by taking up the processes of your liver, okay, in order to be able to process it. So that's just a side note. Okay, now let's talk about the sugars, because life is not fun if you don't get to have sweet stuff, right? Okay, I understand. I get it, okay? But as I said before, sugar, we don't want, right? We don't want sugar. It's bad for us. So it's this catch-22. When it comes to keto, there are some 0-calorie sweeteners that are allowed. Stevia is one of them. Lohan is another one. Xylitol. And then erythritol. Erythritol. I've probably spelled that wrong as well. Forgive me, please. So these are for sort of 0-calorie sweeteners that are keto approved. And there are tons and tons of keto-friendly dessert recipes out there. But you want to be careful and not to overconsume these. Just because it's 0 grams of sugar doesn't mean you can eat like these keto cookies and keto breads and muffins and I mean, everything under the sun that you would have in the carbohydrate form, there is a keto version of, and they're usually pretty good. But this can still activate your sweet tooth, especially if you've already been someone who's used to having a lot of sugar. I am a recovering sugar addict, okay? When I was a kid, oh my gosh, I was living off of sugar. I feel like I was living off of sugar. My mom's like, no, you didn't, you ate good. I know, I still ate my vegetables and everything, but oh man, put a plate of cookies in front of me and, you know, you couldn't stop me. So it depends on how much you're already relying on sugar or 0-calorie sweeteners. What it can do is just trigger your body to crave more sweets, especially if it's not getting any carbohydrates, but you taste sweet. So your body's going to be expecting it then. It's like, well, okay, where's the sugar? I tasted something that was really sweet, but I'm not getting the sugar that I normally get from that. Where is it? So that can lead to more cravings. Leave out these artificial sweeteners, okay? The sweet and lows and aspartames, those artificial sweeteners, we don't want those. Technically, yes, it's keto approved. It's 0 grams of sugar, but all of the chemicals that come along with it, they also are a lot of times cut with sugar. So the base of it is refined sugar. It looks like a powdered sugar, right? Like you would buy powdered sugar, is that white flaky stuff, and they cut it with sugar. But because it's a 1/2 gram or less of sugar in the pack, they can say that it's 0 grams of sugar. So stay away from those. They're not helping you any. They're not helping you get healthy. And that's really what we're looking for, is overall health, right? Okay, let me see if we've got any questions here. Do you have any kind of menu that you follow? Okay, so back to the sugar thing about Splenda equal. No to equal and no to Splenda. They say Splenda comes from sugar, tastes like sugar. It's got so much artificial junk in it. It's not anything close to sugar. Leave those out. Lee is asking about soy proteins. So if you're vegetarian and you're trying to get your proteins from a vegetable source, make sure that it's organic. It has to be organic and non-GMO soy. Soy isn't my favorite type of protein because it can mimic estrogens. It depends on the person and it depends on what other issues that might be going on. But but it's not my favorite protein. You could do a pea protein. Both soy and peas are coming from the legume family, which normally is not in the keto diet, right? Beans and grains, legumes, those are not keto-friendly foods. They're too high in carbs, along with our other fruits, right? Apples and oranges are going to be too high, watermelon, et cetera, et cetera. So, but when it's in the protein form, it's got a lot of its carbohydrates are stripped out of it. So if you do want to make a veggie protein smoothie, you could do so, but yeah, soy is not my favorite because processed soy seems to mimic estrogens and can have negative health effects for people. So, okay. And then let's see, do I have any kind of a menu that I follow for my personal plan? My personal plan initially was trying the butter coffee, which was delicious, but because it was forcing me into keto so much faster than I wanted to, I backed off from it. So I would try it. You might like it. I have a client who loves the butter coffee. She has that for just 1 cup in the morning, maybe 1 cup later, and she's fueled past 1 o'clock during the day. And she had no, flu-like symptoms from it. But when I did it, I was like, oh, like it hit me right away. And I would have to do the electrolytes and the water to like bring me back up to normal. Which always helped, by the way. So if you ever get that queasiness, that weird feeling, do the electrolytes. You can also do sea salt. It doesn't have to be an electrolyte supplement. Sea salt can also work. Some people drink pickle juice, which could also work. Okay. But that always brought me back. But I wanted to do it a different way. So then I did the bacon and butter. That worked perfectly. I was trying to do bacon and eggs initially, and the eggs were too much protein in the morning. So I did the butter with all that good fat, and that really helped. And then I think the little bit of protein that I had with the bacon also really helped keep me satiated. And yeah, that's what I was doing about 2 months ago, 2 to 3 months ago. I was doing the bacon and butter in the morning, and then I would still be a little bit hungry, so I'd have macadamia nuts or maybe an avocado later on in the day, and not a lot. I wasn't eating another meal. I was just maybe having a snack. And then dinner time, dinner is really, I would say, normal. Now, we were already not eating a lot of grains. We would still have potatoes, maybe some organic corn, occasionally some grains. But we were pretty much already sort of eating, like dinner time was a protein and a salad, maybe some kale or collard greens. The cruciferous and dark leafy vegetables are like staples in our diets already. So it was easy to just tweak the dinner time and just make sure that we're having a little bit more fat. Sometimes I'll have some cheese before dinner or olives. And then I'll have like chicken, like I did chicken legs the other day, kept the skin on, eat the skin so you can get that fat. And then sauteed some broccoli, drizzled some olive oil, and I was good to go. So the dinners are pretty much, for me, have been sort of normal, just a little bit tweaking with taking out any excess high starch or high carb grain or veggie that might be in there. And so, yeah, so that's been pretty easy and also very easy for my husband. So now I can actually have one drink. I can have one drink of alcohol. You will become very sensitive to alcohol when you do the ketogenic diet because your liver doesn't have any stores of glycogen in it anymore. It can process the alcohol really fast. So be careful because that also means you're going to have a nasty hangover if you overdo it. And it doesn't take much to overdo it. So I know my tolerance now is 1. And that's it. My husband can have 2 and that's it. And every now and then he likes to like press the envelope and he's like, no, I can have 3. He always regrets it. And like 3 glasses of wine is, I mean, that's a lot, but it's not crazy. Oh, but yeah, it hits him and he'll feel it the next day. And so, okay, let's see what other, okay, bye, Colleen. Let's see. What else? Okay, let's talk about the other foods that I'm eating right now. Okay, so this is my bag of like keto foods. The first one, pork rinds. Okay, sounds disgusting. They are delicious. This is something that I used to snack on. I have had this in my pantry now for over a month because I don't snack anymore. And I guess you can crumble these up and use it as like breadcrumbs for making certain dishes. I don't get that fancy with cooking. Those are delicious, and they're from, naturally raised, pastured pork. So good, healthy pork. So we're getting good, healthy fats. Grass-fed buffalo butter. This is from Trader Joe's. Trader Joe's has a ton of keto-friendly foods. This is one of them, and I love it because it's buffalo butter. So it's different than cow butter because it's going to have, the protein structure is going to be a little bit different. So if you are lactose intolerant, for example, you might be able to handle something like buffalo butter and not dairy butter, but this might work for you. And it's yummy. And they use Himalayan sea salt. Like, that is awesome. And it's Trader Joe's, so it's cheap. I think it was like, I don't know, $2.29 or something. Really a good deal. Okay, another favorite snack that I used to eat. You can see this bag is still closed. I don't snack anymore, but these are cheese crisps. All it is Parmesan cheese baked into a chip-like thing. Yummy. Okay, coconut milk. Make sure that you're buying the full fat coconut milk. You should always be buying full fat because they just water it down anyways. But this is great to make if you're going to make smoothies. Certain dishes I make one with lamb, and I use that coconut milk and like a half a can of tomato. And yeah, that's really yummy. It's like a sort of like a curry. Okay. Also from Trader Joe's, Chomps. This is 100% grass-fed beef stick. These also used to be a go-to snack, and I have a collection of them now in my pantry. I'll save them for our road trip coming up. This is a great, easy thing to have on the to grab on the go. Chocolate. Okay, this is the fun stuff, right? So these are two keto-friendly chocolates. This one is the Lily's chocolate. They use stevia and erythritol. It's delicious, and I don't like stevia. I'm not a fan of stevia at all. But in chocolate, it seems to balance out the bitterness of the stevia, and it's really good. So this one, Lily's, is only a 70% dark chocolate. This one uses sugar. It is an 88% dark chocolate, and the carbohydrates between the two are about the same. They're very close. So they're pretty much the same. If you can get an 88% chocolate, you're going to be okay. And then I only have a section, right? Like, it says a serving size is half of a bar, which would be delicious, but no. The serving size is like one row off the top. That's a serving size. Let's be real. So these are two options that you can do. This one's 0 sugar. So if you are very sugar sensitive, you might want to go with this one. This one does have some sugar, but they offset each other. They have the same amount of carbs. It's really interesting because this one has so much more chocolate, right? It's got 18% more chocolate in it. That's why it has less carbohydrates. Okay. Back to chocolate. You can also use cocoa powder. You can make your morning bulletproof coffee instead of making it with the butter and the coconut oil. You can make it like a mocha and do it with the cocoa powder, cocoa butter. This is delicious. You open up the bag. This is opened. You've got these little chunks of the cocoa butter. Oh, and it smells delicious. It smells like a bar of chocolate. So when you put that in your coffee with a little bit of this, and then some coconut oil, you've got yourself what they call rocket fuel coffee. So we've got the bulletproof coffee, which is the butter and coconut oil, or you can make rocket fuel coffee with cacao butter, the chocolate powder if you want, and then coconut oil. So we've got 2 different types of the coconut oil. Well, there's actually 3, okay? There's like the type that you're cooking with that you've got like, you know, from the grocery store that's sitting in your pantry that you would cook with. That's like a solid at room temperature. There's also this type, which is the medium chain triglycerides. This is the extract. Basically, it's all medium chain triglycerides. And the good thing about this is a fat that your body does not store as fat. Your body uses it as fat. And it can really help get people into ketosis faster. It also comes in this powdered form like this. This one's delicious too. It smells yummy. But it's funny because there actually isn't really, it has like a light, this one has a light coconut. This one really doesn't. If you don't like coconut, you could go with this oil because there's no odor and there's no flavor of coconut at all. It's just plain oil. This one is supposed to be the same, but just the powdered version. But I find that there's a slight smell to it. So it depends. If you don't like coconut oil, I don't know if you're going to like the powdered one or not. This one is just convenient because it's powdered. You can dump it, you know, make it on the go type thing. And I bought both of these on Amazon. Okay, this one's Viva Labs from Amazon. This one is AMRAP from Amazon. AMRAP Nutrition. And let's see. Okay, sugars. So I know I just said I hate stevia, and I do still kind of hate stevia. So when I first started out, I was like, well, you know, I kind of want something sweet. And I was at Trader Joe's, and they had their little coffee sampling. And I said, let me try their stevia. It's been a long time since I had it. I put 1 drop in the coffee, and I thought, well, it's not that bad, actually. It's not that bad. And then I went and made some desserts with it, and I was like, oh, like way too much. I used heavy whipping cream with the cocoa powder, and then I did a drop of stevia. And the stevia just was overpowering, right? I was trying to make like a little mousse type dessert then. So I think when you have it with something like coffee where you've got that bitterness, it kind of takes out the sweetness with the stevia. At least that's what I found. Then we've also got xylitol. So xylitol is also keto friendly. It is made from the, is it bark? It's either bark or plums. I can't remember. So it is considered a natural sweetener. If you have pets, don't let them get into this. This is toxic for dogs. It increases their insulin so much that they could go into like shock. So yeah, don't let your doggies get this xylitol. Also, when you're cooking with this, if you're baking with this, it's going to lower the temperature of your baked goods whenever, you know, whatever's going on in the oven. So it might take a few more minutes. And also it's very granular. So you can grind it up in a coffee maker or grind it up before you use it so that you get, it spreads out a little bit better, mixes up better with your foods. I don't know why they don't grind it already before and why it's so granular, but that's just a little tidbit. Okay, now onto some of the supplements that I recommend and that so the first one, what we just talked about, fiber. This is also Viva Labs, same as the MCT oil, the medium chain triglyceride oil, the coconut oil, same brand, organic psyllium powder. When I started, because it can make you constipated. If you start with too much fiber too soon, you're gonna have the opposite effect. So you just want to start with like just a little sprinkle, just a little bit in a nice big glass of water. Start with that in the morning and you can work your way up to a teaspoon. So now I do a teaspoon of that in the morning in like 16 ounces of water. And I also do my raw apple cider vinegar with it. That's great for keeping your digestion optimized. Okay, electrolytes. So this is the electrolytes that I used to take. They're from Trace Minerals. As you can't really see, well, maybe you can. Let's see here. I don't know if you can see that. No, I'm getting too much glare. The bottle is more than half full. I bought this, when I first started out to mitigate the symptoms that I was having of going into ketosis, to keep my body, so I keep electrolytes in my body. And I ended up, going into ketosis relatively quick. Well, relatively speaking, I was going back and forth, right? So 5 months or 3 months to get into ketosis is kind of a long time. But the point is I ended up not needing as many as I thought I did. So I have a giant 300 tabs. And when I was using them, these are tablets, I would just take 2 at a time. And that would squash any type of a keto flu-like symptom that I was having. Okay, another really important nutrient to take, and everyone should really take magnesium. This is great for your heart muscle. It's great for relaxing your muscles. And I take this as 1 spoonful, like about, the serving size is 2 teaspoons, and that's about what I take. You can take it in the afternoon, and it's called Calm, but it doesn't make you tired. This isn't something that's going to put you to sleep. All it does is really calm your nerves. And really everybody should be taking this, but it's going to help with your bowel movements. Okay. It's going to help keep your nerves, like I said, calm. Magnesium is one of these minerals that are really depleted in our soil and in our nutrients. And then the only other sort of supplement that I have is gelatin. Now, this you can add to your bulletproof coffee in the morning as well, and you're going to get some protein from it. So this has all of the amino acids in it. This one comes from the Great Lakes brand, and they have, let's see, it's organic. This one is gelatin from beef. There's also a porcine one, and I was thinking, is this one from pig or beef? I couldn't remember. This is their beef one, dissolves in hot and cold, and it also contains all of the amino acids in it. So this is, some people use this as a little protein supplement. It's also great for your hair, your skin, your nails, but also your joints, your connective tissue. So if you do have any, if you have any aches or anything, that can be great. And it could also be something that you put in your coffee or in a smoothie in place of a protein supplement. Okay, so any other questions? Let's see. Will you send us a list of the foods that you are showing? Sure, I'll send you a list. Yes. Anybody else? Oh, yes. Okay, cheese crisps are addictive. Yes, they're addictive. So great point. Okay, if you have any foods that you would say are like a trigger food, a food that once you eat it, you have a hard time not eating it, even if it's keto, you're going to want to beware of that, okay? And you might want to leave that out. So what I recommend to my clients when we're starting, go through your cabinets, right? Clean out all of your high carbohydrate foods. Get rid of them. Donate them. It just so happened right around when we were doing this, there was a food drive, and I was able to drop off my canned beans, my extra bags of, whatever I had, pasta, things like that. I was able to get rid of them. And then we could start fresh. And if there's anything like the cheese crisps that, once you open the bag, like you can't stop yourself, maybe that's not your best snack choice. Maybe that's something you can have later on after your body has become keto adapted, just because it is easy to overeat. And then, yeah, you can end up like how I did, and I gained weight. I gained maybe like a pound or 2. I don't know. I don't weigh myself. So but I knew I had gained weight because my jeans weren't fitting right anymore. And I was like, wait a minute, this is supposed to be going the other way. But I knew I was on the right track because I just felt amazing. I felt so much better. So all of these fancy keto recipes that they come out with, and you'll see for like baked goods and what they call fat bombs that use these sugars or these nut flours, it might be keto, but it also might trigger you to overeat. So just be aware of that. Okay, let's see. Vitamin supplements. So the ones I just mentioned are pretty much the supplements that I take if you're referring to a multivitamin. I don't take a multivitamin, but I do take individual vitamins. Like I take a vitamin D, I take a B12 with folate. Well, it's a methylated B12 with folate. That's a whole other topic about supplements. I'm going to be doing another workshop for supplements because I used to be a supplement buyer for Whole Foods Market. And there's so much misinformation out there about supplements, what you should be taking. And so that's going to have to wait because we're just going to go down into another 2-hour webinar here. Let's see. Any other questions about what I've been talking about, what I've shared with you guys? Let me know. Otherwise, we're just going to wrap up here. And I hope you guys found this informative. And I hope that you think it makes sense now. Okay. Try and do this in a clean way. Like I said, we've got sorry, there's something floating around my face. Yeah, we might have 0-calorie sweetener options, but it's not really a clean option. It's not really the best option. Yes, you can go to McDonald's and get their Big Mac without a bun, but is that really the best quality fat sources that you want to be getting? And all of that is going to depend on where you're at. Maybe that's where you're at right now. Maybe the best that you can do is on your way to work. That's what you're doing is, a step down from maybe just having like an Eggo McMuffin or not McMuffin. It just combined two things, an Eggo waffle with syrup in the morning, right? So you have to start with where you're at, first of all, and then see where you can go. Make the adjustments and start, making baby steps. You can make progress, but know that the end goal is something bigger, is that you want to be eating clean. You want to be fueling your body with fat so that you can burn your body's fat. That's the amazing thing about ketosis. And that's really what I was doing before with clients, was bringing their blood sugar back down. So as I said before, you can't have both ketones and glucose going at the same time. One is going to be more dominant at all times. Before, when I would work with clients, we would be balancing out our glucose levels for the purpose of getting the body to burn ketones for fat, for getting the body to burn its own fat. We would do that by, once the glucose levels start dipping back down and the insulin goes away, now your ketones can come back and come into play. But this happens on a much smaller scale. You see, this happens as a much smaller scale than relying on ketones altogether and eliminating the carbohydrates and eliminating the glucose. Now we've got this ketogenic state that we can operate on much of the time, where we can rely on our body's fuel sources much of the time, the stored fuel and not eating fuel. Does that make sense? Okay, let's see. How often can you have apples once you're in ketosis? So I was a big apple eater before. I would have at least half an apple a day. Usually my husband and I would share like the large apple. And yeah, I miss them, but I don't have them anymore. So the answer to that is it's going to depend on your carbohydrate tolerance. People can go up to 50 grams of carbohydrates in a day and still maintain ketosis. If you're an athlete, you could go up to about 100 grams of carbohydrates a day and still maintain ketosis. So it's going to depend. It also might depend on how much carbohydrates you can handle at one meal. So having it every single day might not work. It might work if you have maybe a quarter of an apple every other day. You're really just going to have to play around with that and tweak it. One really interesting thing that I was concerned about when I was going on the ketogenic diet was, what about all of the antioxidants that I get from fruit and from other vegetables that might be considered a high carbohydrate vegetable? And so now I can't eat them anymore. And aren't antioxidants really good for us? And, this doesn't seem right. It caused me concern, especially with cancer being so prevalent and antioxidants being such a big component of that. Well, what squelched my fears was the book called Fat for Fuel. I forgot to show you guys these. So this is an excellent book by Dr. Mercola, Fat for Fuel. And he talks all about how carbohydrates actually produce more negative byproducts that require more antioxidants. So eating something like fruit, like an apple, for example, that has high amounts of carbohydrates, also has, high amounts of antioxidants, as long as you're eating the peel with it, you're going to, it sort of mitigates itself right there. But if you're not eating that, you're not going to be getting all of that excess byproduct from the production of carbohydrates. His book is really, if you're interested more in finding out about optimizing your mitochondria, this is something I didn't even know about when I was starting it. I had no idea that this is one of the benefits of being in ketosis. And he talks about how this can really be beneficial for people with cancer, which I found fascinating. He gives many other ways to do it, to help your body fight cancer and to become optimized nutritionally, not just with the keto. So he goes into other lifestyle things and that. But you might find that fascinating. Another book that is awesome is Keto Clarity from Jimmy Moore. He co-wrote this with Eric Westman, MD. And it also has many citations with other doctors who have backed up his sources and backed up his claims. So people go, oh, he's not a doctor. What does he know? It is verified by multiple doctors and also case studies. He also has recipes in the back. Both of them have recipes. I've also provided your cheat sheet with recipes, and those are great sources. The author of this book also wrote a book called Cholesterol Clarity. Fantastic read. So I recommend both of those. Let's see. Is there any other questions? I don't see any other questions. So I think I've covered everything. I hope you found this helpful. And if you do have any additional questions, or if you're thinking like, well, what about with this? Or I have this. Oh, let me just say before I stop, before I end this, some of the precautions that people should take heed. If you do have type 1 diabetes, you're going to want to start this very slowly so that you can make sure that you're adjusting your insulin properly. Take it in baby steps. But there are type 1 diabetics who do use the ketogenic diet. It's fine for type 2 diabetics, but you do also have to take it slowly. You need to adjust. You need to calibrate. Let your body adjust too. You're probably going to have a little bit harder time with your side effects and what you're feeling. The side effects could be harder, but you're taking glucose out of the equation, which is beautiful. Also, people who don't have a gallbladder, or if yours is a little rusty, maybe you have problems with gallstones in that, you're going to want to be careful doing a ketogenic diet. Make sure, and you should already be having this anyways, but make sure that you're taking a lipase enzyme that helps you digest fat, and also bile salts. Those are going to help emulsify the fats, help with your digestion and absorption of the nutrients. That's really at the root of everything. If we can't absorb our food, we're not going to be able to use it. So if you do have your gallbladder removed, make sure that you're taking those supplements and start slowly as well. Also, someone who has adrenal fatigue, you're going to want to recover from your adrenal fatigue before you go into something like ketosis, because it's going to be too taxing on your adrenals. Your adrenals, when they're in that fatigued state, are really reliant on carbohydrates to keep them going. And that's why you should eat like little meals throughout the day with a little carb, little protein, little fat. But nourish your way back to health, and then you can do a ketogenic diet. And of course, if you have high cholesterol, or if you're worried about your cholesterol, get your cholesterol levels checked. Go meet with your doctor. Many of the doctors out there are becoming familiar with the ketogenic diet. And so if you bring it up to them, they might say, hey, this is worth a shot, especially if you're overweight, because it can help you lose weight and help bring your cholesterol levels down just because of the weight loss. Okay, so now I think we can wrap up. I hope I gave you guys all of the information that you can use and go out and try the ketogenic diet. You're going to have to tweak it. You're going to have to adjust it and see what works for you. But eliminating carbohydrates and eating high amounts of fats, I really don't see myself going back to eating tons of carbohydrates again, because I feel so much better on the ketogenic diet. Okay, so that wraps it up. Thank you, everyone, for staying on and for all of your questions. All right, take care.